thinking is very important, and the term mindset, when you want to split it up, it's usually consisting out of some belief systems, and usually mental models. Belief systems are usually things you say to yourself consciously or unconsciously, which shape your reality in a certain way.
Let's say someone would start using your tool. So how can I actually retarget people more effectively using AI methods?
You collect data. So this means you have to connect the platform to all the tools you're using. You know, usually HubSpot, Close, Meta, and you connect basically everything you use in the funnel.
Regarding your entrepreneurial journey, how much have you learned from mentors?
In general, I didn't have one mentor. I didn't have a person to look up to. For me, my mentor was YouTube. It's the multitude of things which gets you well-rounded. I, of course, spoke to people which I considered further in the process in some steps and which I knew I can learn from. And I usually listen to their advice.
All right, give us an introduction to yourself. Quick intro.
Fabian Hohmann, founder of OneTrack. Basically, we're building products to give data back to the people. That's our main goal. And thank you for the invitation. Happy to talk to you today. Let's start.
Yeah, really good. We talked about so many topics before the actual recording. Where should we start? Maybe let's talk about data in the first place. So why do you want to give data back to the people? So what's the initial problem that you solve with OneTrack?
There's a difference between the initial problem and the mission and the vision of the company. Basically, the most important thing at the moment in this day and time of the world is that data is flowing everywhere. It's flowing in the cloud, it's flowing on the mobile phones, it's flowing everywhere through the veins of the society. And the problem is that it was built, all of this internet, all of these services we use, in a monopolistic way or oligopolistic way. So like you have a certain amount of companies who own the data, a certain number of companies who are working with the data of all the people who are using their services. And the problem with this is that there you have a tendency to have a central point of failure. That you have a central point of power where people can use that data to make money, to grow the businesses and stuff like that. And our goal is to give the data back to the people. That means that you as a shop owner who uses these big companies as service providers, as platforms for your business, that you are able to collect data yourself, use data yourself, driving your own conclusions, and be a little bit freer than you have been before from big oversight of other people and to the scrutiny of their means and actions.
Mm-hmm. You do quite a lot. I know I keep poking on OneTrack because I'm quite interested in the tool, how it works, because your website is great, but I really want to dig deep on how this actually works. So what differentiates your tool from others out there?
In general, we are an ad tracking tool. So what we are doing is like we are also collecting in the name of the owner of the data, data about the customers in your prospective business. And what we do is like we do it in 3 steps. And these 3 steps are basically the big difference between other tools, because usually what tools do is just fulfill one of these 3 steps. So what you see there is you have, for example, a collect process, you have a transform process, and you have a post-back process. And there's tools who are playing the data back to the media like Facebook, Meta nowadays, and Google. Then you have a transforming platform. This is usually done in from a data warehouse standpoint on. They check the data, what is in there, is the telephone number right, are email addresses right, and so on and so forth. So they clean the data, structure data. This is usually a tooling. And then sometimes you have a special collection process for data where you take on data, lead generation data, e-commerce data, and just collect it without cleaning it, without structuring it, and without playing back. And the problem is when you just have one part of this 3-step process, then there is a big danger for you, because the problem is you have not everything made out of one tool. So this means usually the postback does not know what the collection process does. Maybe there is unclear data coming through and stuff like that. And there is risk. So you can never guarantee an end result. And what our biggest goal is basically, is to give these end results and to guarantee the end results for the customer. And so the customer can be sure when he controls the collection process, the transforming process, and the post-back process, that in the end he has also a result at all, which we can work with. So that we can say, okay, when you have these 3 steps, You have a guaranteed result of a clean ad tracking process. You can see customer journeys. You get clarity about who your customer is, how he behaves, how he works with your product. And this is where the value is in the end.
Yeah, that sounds super cool. Sounds super interesting. Walk me through a process. Let's say someone would start using your tool. So how would I actually get started? And how could I enrich, for example, lead information in the process? And how can I retarget people more effectively using AI methods? Like, how does this work?
In general, we are not working with AI yet. We are developing in-house different models and approaches to work on, but this is to be spoken soon about, not yet. What at the moment is the case is, first of all, like I said, you collect the data. Yeah. So this means you have to connect the platform to all the tools you're using. You know it usually HubSpot, Close, Meta. Then, for example, use Webflow, WordPress. That's your web pages. Yeah. And you connect basically everything you use in the funnel. So usually your funnel is Meta, Google in the front end. Then you have WordPress or Webflow or some other page provider for the landing page. Then you have maybe forms like Webflow forms, or you have like yacht forms or type forms people are using.
Yeah.
Then you have a CRM. Then you have a payment platform where the payment is processed, like for example, Copecard, EloPage, or some other providers like Stripe internationally. And all of these different containers, have a problem that they are not communicating very well with each other. So there's friction, and this friction leads to data loss. When you have this friction in between, and you try to shift the customers from Meta to the landing page, to the form, to the CRM, to the payment processor, you lose data. And with this lost data, you have the problem that you cannot identify the customer properly here in the end. You cannot understand why he bought from you. Yeah, you don't know it's the same customer who watched your website 6 weeks ago but didn't click. So this is a big problem. And this customer journey is mostly hidden for all of the people. And they just keep guessing, and marketers usually try to guess their way around it and try to find some metrics. And with these metrics, they usually want to see kind of the customer journey. And with OneTrack, all of this stops. With OneTrack, what you can do is basically verify what you see. You don't have to trust us. You can verify. So we show you where the data is coming in, what kind of data is coming in, why we attributed it, how we did it. Yeah, you can see the attributes of each lead, of each purchase and stuff like that. And with that, you can verify yourself and then move basically on to the next steps and say, okay, now I know for sure the data is correct. Are my assumptions which I made also correct?
Yeah.
And this brings us to one of the biggest problems. Marketers usually don't like when their ideas are not right.
Yeah, correct.
And they have their own perspective.
Yeah.
And this is a big mistake, especially when you're working with data, especially when you work in marketing. Your idea is not right. The market idea is right. The data is usually right. Yeah. And this is the way usually you should work, but unfortunately most of people don't.
Yeah, I like how this was not a sales pitch, but you sold me on the idea. I definitely have to check out OneTrack. We'll talk about it after the podcast, because I really like this kind of customer journey. Like you track every step of the process. And as you said, 100%, you hit the nail on the head. Like marketers work in a very data-informed way where they actually should be data-driven.
Exactly.
So they go by gut feeling and they pretend to know it all, even though they make assumptions along the way. They even ignore the friction processes that you mentioned. So I think this is an amazing tool. Why haven't other people solved this yet? Why are you the first ones, quote unquote?
We are not the first ones for the single containers. Like there's other people who doing it, like since Oracle back in the days. They started already in the beginning of the 2000s doing some marketing suites and stuff like that. The problem is usually it's not all from one hand. And it's very difficult to scale it because it's kind of a lot of work and a lot of special knowledge you need. For example, you need to be able at the moment to have like a lot of capacity to receive events and structure them. Events like purchase events or something, there's thousands, 100,000 events coming in per second, and you have to have the ability, the technical ability to solve it. Then second problem usually you need knowledge over the whole process. Yeah, and you should go into detail in this process because that's what it solves in the end. Yeah, like I said, it's easy to build one part of the solution, but not the whole solution. Then in general, you also need the investment sum to do it. This is probably something most people are also struggling with it. We did it ourselves in the beginning and then grow organically without any venture capital. But there is also a problem with the understanding and the deepness of the problem, how to say it, the depth of the problem, to say it. The depth of the problem is you have to understand quite well what you are solving, and you have to solve it in a right way that the customer can still use it. Because the problem is, if you have usually a complicated problem, it ends up in a complicated solution, which is not a solution at all then for the customer. And you have to be in between these and find some steps where you can break down the complexity so the end user can use the product very easy. You see this every day, for example, in phones or stuff like that.
I like that approach because I think especially when you start with your entrepreneurial journey, I feel like people are not customer oriented. They're more like, I want to make money, or like, I think I have a solution to a problem that doesn't even exist in the first place. But you took the first approach where you say, we see the problem, we try to solve the problem for the customer, and then just build the solution for the customer.
Of course, the thing is, usually when you develop stuff, it's called pivoting. That's what they mostly do. This is when you learn about the market. You learn what the market wants, you learn what the market really needs. And we also learned from the market a lot, you know. And so you have usually a very healthy back and forth with the customer, the customer feedback they give to you, and then with the development you do in-house. And so you have a nice, like, nurturing environment where software can grow, for example.
Talk to me about the early days of OneTrack. Like, how did you guys get started? Because I'm always interested in the journey a little bit. I know you're not a big fan of talking about yourself and like giving praises to yourself, but talk about the beginnings and how much you've grown since then.
In general, in the beginning, it was like just an idea coming out of a necessity. We tried every like other tracking tool, so said, on the market, which was existing back then, which was around like 3.5, 4 years ago. And we were quite unhappy with the results. Like, we tried, we used it, and it was not what we wanted to see and not what we wanted to use, and it didn't solve our problem. So we said, okay, what do we need to solve it? And this is basically how the journey started. We started trying stuff, we started figuring out stuff, and then step by step grew our profile to a software company. We always wanted to do software from the beginning. This is clear, basically, since I can think of business, that I want to do a software company. And I said, okay, I'll prepare myself for it. And when the time is ready, we start. And the time was ready, and then we started. And from there on, we grew. We grew in a quite chaotic way, to be honest. We had like different countries, different approaches, but we somehow learned from every market some special insights which we can use later in the product development, and which makes it possible to build a complex product like that in the end. And so what we did is, like, we took the learnings from the different markets, unified them in one product, and now we are trying to step up this product step by step. And that's what we have done since then, and we're quite happy. That's
very cool. What I like about your team is you're really like open, you're really cool, relaxed about it.
Thank you.
Okay, how much do you learn from mentors still to this day, but also before you even started the company, when it comes to building a software company, but also in general, like your entrepreneurial knowledge?
In general, I didn't have one mentor. I didn't have a person to look up to, but I was quite different in that approach. For me, my mentor was YouTube.
Okay.
And
who did you watch though?
Like it's different. It's very different. It's the multitude of things which gets you well-rounded.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
True.
So what I try to do is, like, I of course spoke to people which I considered further in the process in some steps, and which I knew I can learn from. And I usually listened to their advice, which was quite helpful. But there was not one single person I can just point out and say, okay, this was like the person who shaped me, or this was the person I could learn from. And so I took the approach, in my opinion, that I said, okay, there's a lot of intelligent people out there. They're producing videos on YouTube. So let's watch them. Let's see what they are doing. Let's see how they are approaching things. Let's look in between the lines what they are doing. And over the time and step by step, you always come back to the basics. There is no fancy solution for your complicated problem in your head. In the end, it's all basics. And the solutions exist since humans exist, basically. They have been probably written down already like 2,500 years ago by the old Greek people, the ancient Greeks. And if you see the state of society today, which is quite noisy. We have a lot of trouble around notifications here, distractions there, you know. It's very helpful to go back and read the classics, do the basics, yeah, and distinguish signal from noise, you know. And with this is basically the mentorship I was reading. So if you want to put it that way, I had all the greats of the history and of YouTube as my mentors.
Yeah, I like that approach a lot. How do you actually cut through the noise, especially in your case? You're the CEO, you're one of the founders. With so much noise going around, a lot of problems on the world that we're facing nowadays, how do you cut through the noise? How do you stay focused? Because I think one of the biggest problems people have is they can't focus, especially through this thing called TikTokification. Attention span is basically gone, went downhill drastically. How do you do it personally?
For me personally, I don't have TikTok. I don't have Instagram apps on my phone. I have a profile, but not on my phone actively.
Yeah.
I don't have notifications. I just said to myself, we have to de-TikTokify my brain, and stuff like that. And that's a big problem which you're speaking about actually in the society nowadays, that people have it's so-called TikTok brain, that they just see reels and they just move on, like in a 2-second, 3-second movement. And this is hitting dopamine every time, the movement, everything is engineered for that, so that the companies maximize the attention you give to them. And the problem with this is that the people lose the ability to learn something in depth and are very shallow usually. Like they're very shallow in the topics they can learn. And the problem with this is you're quite easily impressed with shallow work, and this leads to bigger problems down the road. In my opinion, I would just like try to not have notifications on your phone. Try to get your phone away when you sit down in a restaurant with friends. Turn it around, or don't put it even on the table. Yeah, like turn it upside down that you don't see the notification. Don't have signals at all. And for you to distinguish it, you have to think. And this is the time you're saving, the attention to think. Not that time and attention together enables your thinking process. And if you have this thinking process, you can go through it. And when you go through it, you have a pattern recognition. You see what is working in the real world. You get feedback.
Yeah.
And with this, you can clarify your models in your head. And when you clarify the models in your head, you have a very clear path to follow. And sometimes when your path is very well developed, also the bad stuff feels not good to you. So you can naturally avoid it. And the good stuff you feel drawn to, you know, like you want to read more, you want to do so. And this can be different for every person. Yeah. You know, for me, myself, it was YouTube. Yeah, but on the other hand, there's other people maybe who like to read books, or people who like to talk to people to learn. And this is completely free. Yeah, just make sure you're uninterrupted. Enjoy the real life. Yeah, and this is not what everybody's ready for right now.
Back to the roots. I like that a lot. How do you do it on a day-to-day basis? So how does a typical day of you look like? Probably always different, a little bit different, but like, let's say a classical day of yours. Do you do time blocking? Do you use any specific methods?
I'm very basic in that. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of meditation, reading, journaling, and then
it's already 12 o'clock before you start working.
And then it's 12 o'clock. Basically, get up,
do
what you like drink a coffee, open your laptop, start working. It depends in which stage you also are. Like, I would not suggest to get up and feed your brain with dopamine from your phone. It's cheap dopamine, basically. Cheap dopamine is usually bad for you in different ways. This goes from phone, TikTok, and Instagram, over porn, over drugs, over chasing women or something like that. And this is not what it should be. I'm not judging you. Do whatever you like. I'm just saying it's probably not good for you. And the thing is, when you don't have the results in your life which you want, you should ask yourself, are the processes which are giving me these results correct? Or do I have to change anything? Pattern recognition, what we talked before about. And what I said there is like, when you have this standard day for me, I usually wake up. Sometimes I wake up very early. Sometimes I wake up at 9:30. It depends how long my night was, because
you also listen to your body.
Yeah, like I look what I need, you know. And we have also different schedules. Sometimes we have over different continents. We're working in different time zones, and there's late calls at 3 o'clock in the morning. So the stuff is, okay, you go late to bed, so you're not going up when you go at 3 o'clock in the morning to bed. Sorry. So when you go to bed late, you're not going to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, so you're going to sleep. I make sure I get enough sleep because a sleep-deprived brain for me is not like what I want to have. And this is basically in an easiest way spoken. And also there, do the basics. Turn off your phone. Try to eat natural food. Yeah. Try to avoid smoking. Try to avoid cheap dopamine anyway. Yeah. I said try to avoid. If you smoke once a week, nobody cares. Yeah. Don't be too strict. Live the life, but live it on your terms. Like find your way, find your value, and use this as a guidance. And there we're back to pattern recognition.
Yeah. How important is mindset for you when it comes to business, but also life in general? Because the mind kind of build your thoughts, and thoughts build actions. You know, it's kind of a circle.
Thinking is very important, and the term mindset, when you want to split it up, it's usually consisting out of belief, some belief systems, and usually mental models, in my opinion. Belief systems are usually things you say to yourself consciously or unconsciously, which shape your reality in a certain way. And it can be good, can be bad. When you tell yourself, oh, I cannot do that, I cannot do that, oh, I'm anxious, you will be anxious. Yeah. If you tell yourself, oh, I can do that, probably sometimes you will be lucky and you can do it. Yeah. So this is a belief system. But what is more important, what people neglect to build, I think, in our actual life right now, is mindset models. From the mindset to the models, like you build a model. Why do we need a model?
You could, for example, not trivialize, but simplify complex systems.
Exactly. And the real world is too complex for our brain to process. So we rely on models to find different concepts. And let me give you a little bit of insight on this one. When you have a mental model, for example, and you are working with it, there is different good and bad things about this model, because a model is an oversimplified way of reality which is missing out in some extreme parts, probably. Yeah, so you have mistakes. The problem with this is, I will give you an example because it sounds super high esoteric or like super complicated, but it's very easy. Have you ever been to Berlin?
Yes.
Good, amazing. So now you're in Berlin and you're in the city. You are now living here in Eindhoven. So you probably don't know what's in the cinema in Berlin playing right now, right?
Correct.
So what do? You want to go and see a movie. You get a mental model in form of a movie plan of a cinema. So you see at which time which movie is running. Okay, you choose a movie. Now you want to go to the cinema. That's your next mental model. Do you use now your cinema plan, which movie is running, for the route you're planning to visit the cinema? No. You probably go by subway. So what you choose? The next mental model, subway map. Different model.
Yeah.
So now use a subway map and you go there. If you walk there, you probably need a street model because you cannot use the subway model to do it. Because it's different for a different purpose. There's a different purpose for this model. Okay, perfect. So you see, you have always specific use cases for models. You have specific use cases for the mental belief systems, and you have to train yourself to choose the right model, and you have to get an inventory of models you're working with.
How do you train that?
In general,
because you could pick the wrong model at the wrong time.
But then you get usually feedback from reality. And
most people ignore it, though.
That's a choice you can make. I would not recommend that. But let me finish just maybe the part, because this is what you see. You have also mistakes in models. So, for example, have you ever seen a map in your life? Like a classic map?
Yeah.
How the people use it back in the 90s.
You mean a world map?
Like just a city map, maybe, of Berlin.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Do you know what a circle with a cross on top means in a map? It's explained.
You tell me.
It's the sign for a church.
Yeah.
So now you look sometimes at a model. The map is a model of the city. Yeah. And you see the cross on top of the circle. When you walk to this point where the cross with the circle is, do you expect the cross with the circle there?
No.
No. You expect a building as a church with a tower and a proper real-life building. So even there you can see there is simplifications and mistakes, and you have to adjust your thinking and your model right to use it properly. And this is what you said, like, how do you come up with these models? It's basically you look in the real world and see what's working. I have a really good friend. He never read a book about success, this guy. He never spoke to any of the success business coaches or did anything online. The only thing he did, he's a very hard training young man. And this led him to worldwide success. He's a professional kickboxer and world champion. And what is super interesting is that the guy never chose the classic way of reading books or something. There is ways to distill the wisdom out of reality. And he used hard training and his own capability to observe himself, to find the reality truth, the models, the belief systems, and he comes up with the same stuff people write in books.
Yeah, but do you feel this is through pain? So pain is the enabler for finding the more right systems. Because I feel when you look at the history of like successful people, I feel like going through pain, or like this kickboxer, for example, going through pain actually enables you to iterate quicker and have a much shorter feedback loop. Because if you avoid pain, the feedback loop is much longer.
I think it's not the length of the feedback loop. It's more like your avoidance of pain.
Yeah.
Because the people when they feel pain, they like, oh my God, I want to change it now.
Yeah. Kind of
Let
fight
me
or flight
change it
mode.
now. Yeah, and this is a much stronger reaction than like, oh, it's good. You know, I think that could be a reason for that. And I think pain is a necessary part of life. We can all not avoid it. Doesn't matter how rich you are, how poor, how smart, how dumb you are, you will receive a painful event at least once in your life. And you have to cope with it. And what I wish to the people usually is that they are ready for it. Because it can happen also in very young years of your life when you're still a child. And this can have severe consequences for your thinking and your development of character later on. And I would not wish it to you, but it's unavoidable. Yeah. But pain is for sure a catalysator of results. Like it's pushing you when you need it.
Do you look for pain explicitly in your life?
Oh, believe me, as a founder, you have enough pain.
yeah, but you look for it explicitly.
But in general, I'm not looking for the pain. I just
It comes to you.
I let life happen because I have no control over certain aspects of my life. The parts I have control over, I try to control because, like we said already, there's enough parts around which I have no control over. And to control things, you need to be aware that you can control them. You know. You have to learn that you can change the outcome when you have an action. And with pain, usually it comes, you have to endure it and then find maybe a solution on the way or find a way to cope with it.
Yeah. How would you define yourself as a leader? How are you? If you would to define yourself, how would employees talk about you, your leadership style?
They would probably say, we would have a very funny conversation. My leadership style is usually kind of friendly, but the thing is, I'm not directly leading the people, so I guess there is some people in between us who are having the day-to-day work with the people. In general, I'm usually open. Everybody can book time with me. Everybody can come to me. Everybody can see what we are doing, and even ask questions about the vision or something. You know, because it's very hard for them sometimes to grasp it in the way we expect it from them to grasp it. So I would say in general, we have a quite open leadership. We have a very focused and performance-based leadership. I'm not a fan of slacking around and like being slow and stuff like that, because that's not who we are. That's not how the culture is. That's not how our people are. And I don't have to force them. They're naturally like that. We select them in this criteria. And we want to work with very smart people who are very fast working, who are very smart, like, and who can grasp concept fast. And it's usually for them a very nice environment, I would say. And we're taking no bullshit. Like the stuff is, like we said before, you have to get feedback from reality. If your plane is not flying, your plane is not flying. Very easy. Yeah. So you don't have to tell me, oh, it would be in the sky when. Okay, change it. Let's see if it flies, you know? And everybody makes mistakes. For us, it's always 1 time is no time, we say usually, but 2 times is 3 times. So, and 3 times we cannot make a mistake. So basically, you have always like a shot to try things, you figure things out, but let's have it in a way where we can use it to have insights, to gather some information, data, whatever you need on a certain topic, on a certain project, on a certain structure, yeah, and to improve it later on based on this data.
Do you enforce, going back to the mental model aspect, do you enforce some mental models on your employees or like in the organization?
No,
Because you kind of prescribe something.
You cannot enforce it. The human mind should usually be free. Most people cannot see that they are trapped in their thinking. This is what's happening to a lot of people, unfortunately. I'm not saying we are not part of it, because I guess you're always some kind of part of it. And the stuff is, we have to find a degree of self-sustainability in thinking, which we are comfortable to endure for ourselves, and which is a nice level where you can be happy. And if you are not happy, you can always improve. This should be open for everyone. Everyone who has like the physical and mental health and capability to do it should do it. Like, explore yourself, find it out, use what is given to you, you know, and try to find the place where your threshold is, where you say, okay, I think I'm free enough now. So
I think you're the type of person or like leader that gives people the freedom and to expose their creativity and try things out. Because I feel like especially society is kind of giving you boundaries. Like when you're born, you're kind of a bundle of emotion. And then, for example, when you give kids a present, you see that usually with kids, they play with the box, they don't play with the toy, because they're very creative, they have a freedom of choice. But then society gives you kind of boundaries. How do you feel society plays a role in nowadays, especially in like shaping people? Is it more like they shape them to become entrepreneurs, or more like the classical 9-to-5 worker? Or do you think this is kind of a conspiracy?
It's a very interesting question. In general, I believe that everybody is shaped through society.
Yeah.
It's hard to avoid if you live with other people, you live in different systems, and the systems and the people will always shape you, because they create experience shape your mind, and then your learnings from that, and you will draw your conclusions from that. I think if you are able, or like not how to say able, I think if you want to escape it, it should be possible for everybody to escape in their mind.
Do you think so? I want to challenge that thought, because I feel like you have a kind of a chessboard. You can potentially make some moves when you're born, but then society gives you restrictions. There is some, let's say, higher forces in society that disable you to take special moves on the chessboard. So some people are allowed to make special moves on the chessboard, others aren't. Would you say that's the case, or do you think this is kind of a false narrative? Because you're kind of restricted. I could not, for example, say I'm going to become the president of the United States of America at some point in life. So I'm kind of restricted in that aspect. I could think, my mind could believe I could do it, but there's some certain boundaries, and people who want to avoid that this happens. Or is it a limiting thought from my side?
I'm not sure if this is a good example, because basically it's a law that you cannot be, because you're not US born.
Yeah, I know.
The president of the United States.
Yeah.
But laws can be changed. They're not physical laws. Usually the only laws which are, the only limitations you have are the laws of physics, which are probably true, or let's say reasonably proven. Every other law you can basically challenge, in my opinion. Like,
without facing consequences?
Not without facing consequences, but this is not what you asked.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking, let's say you want to become this entrepreneur, like a super rich guy. I feel like there is some, again, going back to the moves, there is some certain moves that you can do, but if you do the wrong move, you're going to be challenged by society. Whether that's higher forces, the society in general. How do you feel about that? Like, do you think
define the moves?
The move in the sense of that you can, not infinitely, but billions of dollars. At some point there will be forces that force you to do specific things to be for a higher good, let's say. Because there's some people that prescribe a plan, potentially, so your moves are restricted. So for example, if I say you, for example, you want to be a billionaire, multi-billionaire, you could potentially think it's possible, but I don't think the chessboard allows you to make that move. If you get what I mean. Like, it's very hard to... Do you get what I mean, roughly?
I think I get what you mean. You think that there is some limitations in a certain way because of upbringing, country, race,
money,
gender,
intelligence, location,
everything. 100% there's differences.
Yeah.
and there is advances and like to say there's advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah.
100% in life, because if you're born probably in a certain area of the world which is not economically developed, it will be much harder for you to be like getting education and then go on, and all the things you have to stack in skills up on top of your character to become the person is much harder to attain.
Yeah.
But I think also when we're as people living in the Western world, we have a certain duty to try our best to improve the planet. And that's what I said also before. Many people are wasting their intelligence. Like they're becoming probably like they go to university and then they become lawyers or bankers, and instead of inventing some stuff, and they have a high intelligence, these are smart people. And I'm not the one to insult our lawyers or bankers or tax lawyers, whatever there is, yeah. But the thing is, we need engineers, we need people who build stuff. There is so much good which has to be done in the world, which is not done yet. So there is a lot of room of improvement. But this is one thing. To go back to the topic of going up, I think you should not start with a limiting belief in your mind. The limit will come naturally to yourself when you do your stuff. And like I said, it's the same process in business like in the personal life. I hope you're ready when it comes. So you have the structures in place to deal with bigger problems. And I think usually if there is no physical limitation or disadvantage, like not just from like a physics standpoint, for example, if you want to become a basketball player and you're quite small, like from your height, it will be more difficult for you, 100%. Probably if you're crazily good, yeah, you can still make it, but your probability just goes down. Yeah. But in general, if you are taller, it will be easier. And the stuff is, without these limitations in a physical way, which are shaping your probabilities, you should still try. Try it, do it, make it. Because in the process of trying, you will get other ways, different contacts, new insights, maybe change also your perspective where you want to go. And with this, you find a different outcome for yourself, or a better outcome, or you finally solve the problem and burst the limit or go over the limit, which you perceived as unovercomable before.
One question I had was, you talked about intelligence. So you're pretty smart people, you built an incredible product. You talked about the lawyers and tax advisors, for example, which are super intelligent, but maybe they don't make use of their intelligence in the best way possible. What do you guys at OneTrack give back to society?
First of all, we try, like we said before, to give people control over data. Yeah, because this is something which shifts to economic value at some point, and with economic value, usually also personal goals here. This has not to be like the Porsche or the Ferrari, but more like, oh, I can send my kid to a better school. I can pay for piano lessons and stuff like that. So we are creating also big efficiency. We try to get like people more efficient. So when they spend the money, they have a more efficient way of doing so. And with that they are having more left for what they really need. And this is was das englische Wort für Ad?
PPC? Advertisement?
Yeah, okay, genau. And this is basically in paid advertising a big advantage, because people just see always the negative sides. Oh, they take my data and then they sell me ads. But actually, sometimes I'm happy to get some certain recommendations of stuff fitting to me. And with this, we can also tailor it for you. So the experiences for both sides get better. The people who are using the ad platforms to advertise their product on, and the ones who are using the platform to consume content on it. And so you have like efficiency gain in both ways. And of course, it's also important that software is like a product where everybody can always participate and improve it all the time. And with that, people are having employment, people are having efficiency to get more money for their families or for whatever dreams they have. And you have a perspective where you can always grow. Like you always develop. Like there's nothing you can stop. It's not finished. You cannot say, okay, now it's done and we go home. No, there's always the next step. And then there's the next step and the next step. And this is what keeps you going in the end.
I think this is one of the reasons why you chose, this was one of your intrinsic motivations why you chose software, because before the podcast, we talked about kind of cars, money, watches, etc. It feels like once you have it, you have it. there's already a limitation mentally. But for software, there's always something else. There's the next goal, there's the next step to build. So is that one of your reasons you love building software?
For sure, that it never stops. This is 100% one of the interesting things. It's also interesting because it can scale very fast.
Yeah.
So the ride is quite wild, you know, and I like usually to have a wild ride on stuff, and it keeps things interesting. Because what you said before, we spoke about, like you said, about cars, watches, and certain luxuries. And the thing is this what you live for? Yeah, it sounds very strange, but if you have it, in the end, you have it. Okay, cool. Congratulations. You're still an idiot sometimes. You know, you have to learn certain ways and to value certain ways and develop your way into something which is usually the next step. There's, for most of the people who are looking on the money for a long time, they're running so long after the money that they like forget everything around it.
Yeah.
And when they reach a certain amount, let's say 1 million, 2 million, 3 million euros cash in their bank accounts, they're like super empty after that.
Yeah.
And they fall in kind of a depression. And this depression is like, oh, what should I do now? Because you had no purpose at all. Yeah. And I'm not the biggest motivation speaker who said find your purpose and stuff like that. I'm more on the go out and do shit things of sides. Yeah. And the stuff is, when you do get certain experiences which you can attain by doing things which are complicated, hard, painful, you know, you will come back with an experience. Maybe a good one, maybe a bad one. Yeah. But at least you have an experience. And these experiences shape you much more. And like physical goods in the end are interesting. I'm not saying I'm free of that. Yeah. I like certain stuff, but know yourself. Know what you like. Don't buy stuff for other people. Buy stuff for yourself, which you really like. And challenge yourself. Do you really like it? Or is it just because people say, oh, wow, Rolex? Yeah, maybe, yes. It's also okay if you buy it then. Fine, buy the Rolex, be happy. Yeah, but it should not be your only purpose of life. The purpose of life usually should be that you live a life true to your values, that you can do stuff, you know, that you're able to have like economic energy in form from money to invest in projects, to give it to people. Because in the end, when you die, you cannot take it with you.
Is it also your value system that you actually give back to the community, invest in projects, etc.? Is this is how you live?
Yeah, yes, in a certain amount of way.
Yeah.
At the moment, we're doing it still for our company,
Yeah.
and we are trying to do it via free consulting and ideas with other people and develop that. But in general, it's not only the money, it's also, like I said, network, consulting with people, speaking to people, give a helping hand when it's needed. Yeah, this will get you further than you think. Because when you play, like most of the people, a short-term game for money, it's like, oh, I want to get rich in 90 days, or let's see, in the next 5 years. You're not playing a short game, statistically spoken. You know, like we have probably life expectancy of 85 years in our year of birth. So from now on, we have basically 50 years to go. So it's a quite long game. Probably like 35, 40 years we will work from that. Because even if you have money, you will still do something. Because money itself is boring. Experience is what shapes. And with money, you can get experiences in different ways. Yeah, this is what I want to say.
At some point in time, will you sell OneTrack?
It's possible in general. What I would say right now is we love what we do. We like building the stuff. And we like it. It's not like we are building this to sell it to somebody. We're building this because we think we can help and we can develop more. Like we said, it never stops. And if there's somebody interested at a certain point, there will be an economic decision maybe made or something like that, because markets change, economies change, products change. Yeah. But in general, we're not building stuff to sell. We're building stuff because we're liking to fix stuff.
Yeah, I actually wanted to have this podcast more on the ad side of things so people can optimize. I think your website gives a good overview of what you guys are doing and how you optimize the process from beginning to the end. But it became more like I don't know how to say it, more like entrepreneurial lesson from you, which I really enjoyed. Is there anything else you would maybe like to tell the audience when it comes to OneTrack or generally like your worldview?
like in general, what I would say is like if you're running ads and have a budget like around like 5 to 6K per month on your ad platforms, I would say check out OneTrack. It can help you to be more efficient. It can help you to get more clarity about your customers. It can fix a lot of the problems you have right now, which come from guessing what your customers do. But in general, I would say for people that they should embrace life and live life and try to see it in the real world and go a little bit away from all of this, what's happening online and in certain bubbles, and learn about stuff. Get to know yourself, separate signal from noise. Yeah. And this is basically what I would recommend to people.
I'm certainly going to check it out. I'm going to put also all relevant links of you guys down in the description so people can check it out. Maybe there's some special deal or whatever, maybe like a code, I don't know. But yeah, thank you so much. Maybe there will be a second part in the future, and I'll be in Dubai in around 1 month or so. Then maybe we'll see each other there.
You're happily welcome. Just let me know.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time.